Twickenham Museum, supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, presents a Frontline Theatre Community podcast. The Greater Game, a true story of sport and war. Loos, Northern France, 25th of September, 1915.
Up in, lad!
Roland Burkitt, my giddy aunt. This must be important if the old man sent the editor of the Daily Mail to pick me up.
By rights, it should have been editor of Times. Northcliffe only uses my offices when he feels the middling masses need to know whatever it is he thinks they need to know. You're not squiffy already, are you, Philip?
I thought Northcliffe had sacked you.
He did. He has. Again. We had a difference of opinion as to change of leadership. What with no sign of Asquith bringing this war to an early conclusion.
His money stood on Lloyd George, I take it.
Northcliffe never puts his mouth where his money is. You should know that by now, lad.
Hold up. This isn't the way to Fleet Street.
Tell me, Philip, what do you know about soccer?
Damn all, why?
You recall so-called Christmas truce?
What there is of it to recall after Kitchener and his bloody censors had their way.
It were a romantic gesture to some, but an act of near treason in opinion of the military.
As far as I'm aware, it was just ordinary men in extraordinary times realising that they wouldn't be home for Christmas. Anyway, what's this got to do with soccer?
It were our boys that produced the football. A lively game by all accounts, played in field behind German lines. We lost 3-2. Kitchener made it plain that nothing like it would ever be allowed to happen again.
What? Losing a game of soccer to Germany?
No, you daft beggar. Fraternisation.
And has it?
Not as far as I know. But it would appear that our first big push on Western Front were kicked off via football.
Really?
And it's that curiously companionable combination of sport and war that Northcliffe sees as the focus of your next assignment.
My assignment?
Were it a triumph or a tragedy?
Hold on, Roll. You may not have noticed, but I'm no longer welcome in France. Kitchener himself had me arrested for being a particularly loose-lipped nuisance and a potential hazard, just because I tell it as it is, rather than what the censors dictate.
You need to be back out there, lad, in thick of it. Not piddling your talent down drain in Soho every night.
You think I don't want to?
Listen up, lad. Between you, me and Gatepost, the War Propaganda Bureau is looking to create 5 official war correspondents to be attached to British armies in field.
I'd heard as much, but I don't somehow see me as one of them. Do you?
Now.
What do you mean, now? Whenever you say now in the way you do, usually means you know something no one else does.
What if I were to tell you that Charles Masterman's been appointed head of War Propaganda Bureau?
I'd say bloody Nora, I never saw that one coming.
Neither did Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He's absolutely livid.
I bet he is. That job was his for the taking.
So he thought. Pull over, driver.
What? Why here?
He's in park yonder, judging school soccer final.
Who is?
Charles Masterman. He's expecting you. Northcliffe's told him you're writing a piece about how all of professional footballers have now finally been made to quit field of play for France.
And have they?
But you let it slip that you'd much prefer to find the Tommy they're calling the footballer of Loos.
The what?
Apparently, it were a rifleman with the London Irish Rifles that kicked a football ahead of the charge at Loos.
Where?
Sport and war, lad. That's the worm.
The worm?
The bait, lad. He'll be up for that. And if he bites, which I believe he will, then he's your ticket back to front.
How?
Good luck, lad. Fleet Street driver.
The ball, lad. Keep your eye on the ball.
Advice we might proffer the architects of this confounded war, eh?
There are already too many damn people with too many half-baked opinions on the damn subject, if you ask me.
What the devil's that all about?
Westminster's earned another penalty.
Chaps running the ball through the pack and making a break for the line. That's sport in my book. I know nothing of this game.
What's there to know? It's a game like any other.
The etiquette of sporting competition. As ubiquitous in the words used to describe conflict.
Indeed.
Talk of battle, conquest, a clash of wills, the destruction of the opponent and the like. Sport and war, eh? Show me the difference.
One is without the killing.
Well, yes, there is that, I suppose.
Is that to be the thrust of your piece, Gibbs?
I've not quite decided yet, sir.
You don't sound too keen on your assignment.
Orders are orders, sir.
You know, to me it's all stuff and nonsense, this business of shutting down soccer for the duration. The whole agitation's nothing less than an attempt to deprive the masses of the one distraction they've enjoyed for over 30 years.
There are those of us who find it difficult to comprehend grown men being paid handsome salaries to kick an inflated pig's bladder about a field, instead of working for a living.
And what do they know of the poor man's sport? The same poor that are giving their very lives for this country. Soccer's made an excellent recruitment tool, Mr. Gibbs. It's the only game that offers the common man the chance to fully participate in the greatest game of all.
Still, it is truly staggering how the game has crept into popular culture the way it has. But that said, why is it that young lads such as those out there playing their hearts out can be denied such an inspiring tale?
I'm sorry, Gibbs, you've lost me there.
The Battle of Loos.
And what of it, pray?
Why, the first great charge of the British Army on the Western Front, made following a football, and yet it's subject to the full weight of the censor's pencil. I have to say, I do sometimes wonder what the point is of having a propaganda bureau when news from the front is already censored by the War Office Press Bureau, only to be cleared with Kitchener himself prior to publication.
The work of the Bureau is completely different, lining up leading British artists and authors to promote Britain's interests as part of the war effort.
Like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Among many others. But what's he got to do with it?
His man Sherlock Holmes is a fictitious character who disentangles fictitious inconveniences. All I wish to do is disentangle the factual inconveniences of this war.
Such as?
Oh, good shot!
That was an own goal, Gibbs. Precisely what factual inconveniences do you mean?
The British Army's first big push of the war reduced a little more than a column inch in the newspapers. Doesn't that strike you as odd?
This is war. You're not writing for Mary Ann in the kitchen now.
Lord Northcliffe approached Kitchener on the subject of the footballing exploit at Loos.
Did he now?
He's very keen to follow it up. He believes it's a story that will serve to inspire our brave boys at the front and urge those still at home to join them. Although I don't think even the most powerful publishing magnate this country's ever known will go against Kitchener. Not with the threat of imprisonment hanging over any newspaperman who fails to spread what the government wants the people to hear.
But that's no longer Kitchener's call. Part of my remit is to specifically target those virtues of sport akin to patriotism designed to appeal to young men. This footballing episode exactly fits the bill.
Yes. Now you come to mention it, it does rather.
Look, Gibbs, off the record, I'm appointing a body of official war correspondents.
Really?
Oh yes. Top journalists, only of the highest caliber.
You know I'd relish the opportunity to get back out there, sir. Especially on this one.
I'm sure you would. But there is a due process as well as stiff competition. You come with baggage, Gibbs. I'm not sure you'll be able to convince the board. Not sure at all.
I'll raise you 4 shillings and see you. Damn!
Beginner's luck, old man. Again?
That's it for me. I'm done.
Double or quits?
You've cleaned me out, Mr. Gibbs.
Here. On me. I say, that's a fine wristwatch you have there.
It's my father's. Swiss.
That'd more than cover the pot.
Oh, no. I couldn't possibly.
Tell you what I'll do. The first man to draw a pair wins the lot.
What? All of it?
Every last penny.
That's a lot of money.
He either fears his fate too much or his deserts are small. Who dares not put it to the touch to win or lose it all?
Shakespeare?
Quite possibly. So, what do you say?
I dare to win it all. That's what I say. There.
Good man.
You know, Mr. Gibbs, it is very unusual to find a writing fellow in uniform.
I spent much of the opening months of the war following armies across northern France in the vain hope of being there to witness events firsthand.
And what events did you witness firsthand?
Aside from joining a volunteer ambulance service on the Ypres front before Christmas, I saw very little.
You do know, don't you, Mr. Gibbs, that every man in this train would give his right arm not to go forward, and yet you let yourself to do so because you want to see what it's like?
Not me, old chap. For the readers back home. I want to tell them exactly how it is, to convey the true horror of it all.
I witnessed 12,000 men mown down by machine gun fire in one day. The bodies still lay there, as far as I know.
I'm under no illusions, Lieutenant.
Good.
2 pairs.
Damn!
Here,
What?
take it.
But...
I don't want your watch. Get me on board the Alexander.
What do you mean?
Just that, old man. I'd no time to arrange a passage. I know you're 3 men light.
How on earth do you know that?
General Thwaites gave me the nod.
General Thwaites?
You know him?
Well, yes. That is, I know of him, of course.
You see, there's a chap on board I really need to talk to. And this really is a truly magnificent watch. Cigarette, old man.
No, I am fine, thanks.
Actually, I was wondering if I might cadge one off you. Seem to have mislaid mine.
Oh, sure.
Thanks. Don't have a light, do you?
Would you like me to smoke it for you?
Oh, that's very good. Very droll. You know, as we start out on this perilous journey, I'm struck by moments such as this.
Really?
Take the 2 destroyers yonder laid on to guide us across the Channel. So characteristic of the history of these islands and its turbulent relationship with Europe. So thoroughly English.
I'm Irish.
Indeed you are, Mr. McGill. No offence intended.
None taken, Mr. Gibbs.
Ah, discovery.
It was Lord Northcliffe himself, was it not, that appointed you literary editor of the Daily Mail?
He did, yes.
My novel met with much critical acclaim, apart from the Daily Mail.
Yes. Now I can explain.
What was it in the opinion of that paper? Oh yes. An emerald romance, laced with Bolshevik red.
I never actually read it myself.
Oh, the story concerns an itinerant Irish labourer who turns to journalism in London. He eventually tires of the men who play with ideas and looks to the novel to express his anger over social injustice and the plight of the working man.
A tale of fortitude.
It's an autobiographical account, Mr. Gibbs. Now, what is it you want?
Straight to the heart of the matter, eh, McGill? I want to know about the London Irish Rifles at Loos.
Oh, so Fleet Street did hear us then, did they?
Were you part of the first wave over the top?
Sure. I was there.
I hear that the men went over kicking a football.
So they did.
Did you see it?
I'm a stretcher bearer, Mr. Gibbs. Me and my kind come after the event, as it were, picking up the pieces, salvaging what we can, holding a hand where there is one to hold.
Are you on your way back to the front, McGill?
Not immediately, no. I'm bound for AT Loos, to escort back to Blighty any of our higher-born young gentlemen who survived. I take it you're bound for Loos.
It's a hell of a story.
So it is. But are you the man to tell it?
What do you think?
I'm just a humble poet. Doesn't matter a jot what I think.
Well, thanks for the cigarette, old man.
You might want to think about catching the 12 noon from Morocco. Look out for Captain Dale.
Captain Dale?
It was his platoon, the one that ran the ground dribbling the ball.
Thanks, McGill. Ever the journalist, eh?
Ever on the lookout for justice, Mr. Gibbs.
Oh, blessed relief. It's so cramped and stuffy. If only they'd keep the door open.
If left open, then the cold night air will chew you to the bone, Gibbs. I thought you'd done this before.
Never 8 hours in a windowless cattle truck, Captain. Don't suppose you have a cigarette about your person, do you?
Afraid not. I'm a pipe man.
Not to worry. You know, I could have sworn I had a tin of Players on leaving Le Havre.
One of the chaps would oblige, I'm sure. At least tobacco's not rationed, unlike our shells. Bloody trade union leaders. What on earth are they up to?
Trying to protect workers from dubious employers, so I understand.
Is that all we're supposed to believe?
The government is bringing about an act to make it illegal for munitions workers to refuse to work overtime, whether paid or not.
What if we were to refuse to do our work? We done a blindfold and a bullet, that's what. Would the conditions of the factory workers improve under the German flag, do you think?
That's exactly the sentiments I want to get across, Dale. Why we are here, what we are doing. Even the world leaders appear reluctant to accept the reasons for this calamity.
The reasons are clear, Gibbs. The Hun invaded Belgium and we were committed to assist in the event. Fritzy was better prepared than we were, and now we have to get on with it.
Hostility towards Asquith's government is mounting daily. He'll soon be forced to form a coalition now that Lloyd George has usurped Kitchener as Minister for Munitions.
Shame on them. Kitchener's a national hero.
He may have organised the largest volunteer army in British military history, but he's failed spectacularly to provide sufficient materials with which to fight such a war. Now, charging the enemy guns with a football, that's truly heroic.
I truly and honestly believe that I put an end to that idea once and for all. I knew what they had planned, so did HQ, which is why I had to make sure we towed the line. When we went over, I honestly believed that I'd done the job, completed the task. I sniffed out 7 footballs and put a bullet through every single one of them. Sent the right signal, I thought, although the men thought I was windy.
Hardly, old man.
Oh, they think I'm a good sort, but when it comes down to orders, I don't know what they expected. I was damned if I was going out on a limb just to be bloody popular. This isn't Civvy Street, Gibbs, where one might want to be seen as a good egg on the shop floor. This is the bloody army. This is war. And we do as we are told, whether we bloody well like it or not. But looking back on it all, I might as well have turned a blind eye and let them dribble their damn balls across no man's land. Give Fritzy something to think about as he rat-tat-tatted away like a machinist in the mill. Ah, coffee. At least, that's what they call it.
I just hope that Brigadier General Montgomery's assessment does it justice.
Sorry? You've lost me there, Gibbs.
You know he's been charged with officially commending the attack on the London division at Loos.
I didn't, but it's about time.
He's of the opinion that your mission was far easier than the tasks allotted to other divisions.
What?
That the failure of the attack was down to a faulty method of execution.
But that's wrong, Gibbs. Entirely wrong.
Moreover, Montgomery's of the opinion that the outcome wouldn't have been much different had more men been flung into the struggle at the critical time.
That's outrageous. Bloody outrageous. The attack plan had been prepared on the basis that 2 divisions of reserve troops would be available within 2 or 3 hours of the initial attack to reinforce or exploit success. It took 3 days. We held out for 3 days. You ask any man that was there.
I'm asking you, Captain Dale.
The Café Cognac in Maroc. You'll have no trouble finding someone.
Two dirty Germans cross the line, parlez-vous. Two dirty Germans cross the line, parlez-vous. Two dirty Germans cross the line, kiss the women and drank the wine. Winky, parlez-vous. They came to an inn on top of a rise, parlez-vous. A famous inn of bloody great size, parlez-vous. They saw a maid who dimples in size, they both agreed she'd lovely eyes. Winky, winky, parlez-vous.
That's it, Sergeant. Better out than in, as my mother used to say.
God blimey. Excuse me, sir. I don't know what came over me. Not used to all this wine business.
It can be lethal. Drunk by the pint.
I can't believe it. You're telling me reserves was kept back deliberately by Field Marshal French?
He'll doubtless pay the price. Word is he'll be gone by Christmas. You should see me outside Elvino in the small hours. Cigarette?
Oh, no thank you, sir. Me head's spinning enough as it is.
Perhaps I might relieve you of one of yours in that case.
Of course, sir. Here, have the packet. I tell you, French going will serve to grant an early Christmas present to many a man still breathing. You know it took 3 days after the initial charge for the reserves to finally arrive.
Yes, so you said.
I can think of nothing more galling than telling a man who fought at Loos he was never there.
This lad Cobb you mentioned, is he here?
What, Geoffrey? No, sir, not likely. Not him. He's a good lad, good family, educated. I put the word out. He'll be here shortly.
Tell me about him.
Well, like I say, he's a good lad. He makes you think, you know. I remember his first watch back at Festubert.
I must say, I'm feeling none too heroic, Sergeant Sadler.
Heroics don't come into it, lad. You strive to achieve what's expected of you. That's all. That's your job. What His Majesty's paying you for. Nothing more, nothing less.
But there should be an element of heroism about it all. Surely. In what we've set out to do, don't you think?
A little more than a year ago, the only places you'd ever see a British soldier was changing the guard at Buckingham Palace or face down outside a pub. Now they have us up on stage at the Acne Empire or parading around football grounds like some novelty act. Hero is too valuable a word to be squandered willy-nilly.
I don't know if I can accept that completely.
That's because you are an innocent abroad, Cobb. War serves nothing more than maintaining the status quo for then what brings it about. God bless her, I don't know the Princess Mary personally like, nor does she know me. Yet she sends me gifts and even talks about us being family.
Because she cares.
Because without us, she'd be under the boot of her Kraut cousins more like. She don't love me like I was family. I'm no more loved by her than I am feared I might balls it up. Her gratitude is founded on the delusion that war is somehow necessary.
It's not delusional to do your duty, surely.
We decided to put our fingers in the fire, lad. If we get 'em burnt, that's our own lookout. That makes us no more of an hero as it does a sewerman that drowns in gallons of shit doing what he's paid to do.
And you knew nothing of this planned footballing exploit?
Captain Dale believed he collected every last ball. On the morning of the battle, I was making me last rounds, looking for the lads' rifles and bayonets. I was tightening a buckle here, tugging at a strap there. Oh, 600! German shelling's wild and patchy. You lads okay?
Mickey?
He's alright, Edwards. It's just a shock.
It sounded like that mad bink back at Morocco. The one who got angry with me for dancing around the street in her finest tiffer.
She didn't half lay into you though, Frankie. Anyone would think she was jealous. Mind, it did look better on you, I have to say.
Piss off, Cobb.
Keep it down, lads. Mine's focused on the day's events. It was after I made me exit when Edwards plucked his deflated ball from his tunic and he began to blow it up with his own breath. God's honest, sir, in under 3 minutes.
Bit of a wag, this Edwards.
Frankie Edwards was a one-off, sir.
So he kept his ball deflated until such time as he and his platoon went over the top?
It was Madison what later told me what happened. He also witnessed the kick-off, along with all the others looking down from the high tower they built to see the accessory in action.
The accessory?
The gas, sir. Madison was a chemical corporal. He'd come by to open up the cylinders and he overheard Edwards in full flight.
Remember, lads, the plan is to catch Fritzy on the break when they give away possession in midfield or try to attack. We'll have plenty of strikers near the halfway line in the hope that a through ball can be played to catch them off guard. Defenders and midfielders will join in to outnumber and overtake our objective by quick movement and fast passes. Speed will be all important, as the likelihood of scoring decreases according to how they organise their defence.
This was poison gas, Sergeant.
Is there any other kind, sir? 5,243 cylinders of the bleeding stuff.
Not like German gas, surely.
I don't know what tales you might have heard, sir, but this stuff's not to be messed with. A good number of us were overcome with the initial backlash, falling down, gasping and choking and spitting blood, as the chlorine did what it's designed to do. Some fell and died reasonably quickly, and others suffered agonisingly painful, lingering deaths.
Good evening, Sergeant Sadler. I believe you're looking for me?
Ah, Cobb. Yes, lad. Mr. Gibbs here would like a word with you about Edwards and his football.
You're the war journalist fellow, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Does being a war correspondent make you an officer?
Not exactly.
Then I don't have to call you sir, do I?
No. I don't suppose you do.
You know, I'm not at all sure how well what's really happening out here would be received back home.
The way I see it is we have no choice but to weaken the German spirit and raise the British morale at home by any means we can, including the truth.
Isn't that usually the first casualty of war, Mr. Gibbs?
Why aren't you an officer, Cobb?
Wrong school. No officer training corps, a feature of the better establishments.
I understand you're a bit of a writer.
I've had a few pieces published in Punch and other magazines. I'm currently jotting down notes towards a semi-autobiographical account of my time with the London Irish Rifles. I've already found a publisher.
Under the current censorship restrictions, they'll lock you up and throw away the key.
Ah, I've thought about that. Enter number 29876, Private Alan Webb of the King's Own Etonshire Regiment Territorial Force, who just a year ago was at school reciting the paradigms of Histini and Tithemi in the upper fifth, and bowling googlies for the second 11.
I told you he was educated, sir.
It can't be easy for you, Cobb. Rubbing shoulders with sorts you'd never have imagined sharing a conversation with, let alone a barrack room.
Our society all too often creates and perpetuates stereotypes, which leads to unfair discrimination and persecution when the stereotype is unfavourable.
Such as?
Frankie Edwards, the man central to your investigations. I first adjudged him to personify the archetypal low-brow tough, the Jack the Lad.
And were you right?
We never exactly got on. Bit of an understatement, that. I once made the mistake of asking him why he continually inflated and deflated his football.
'Cause it won't fit in me pack if it's inflated, will it, daft bollocks?
Of course. Sorry, stupid question. So, what do you make of Chelsea in the FA Cup final, Frankie?
I don't make nothing of it.
The pensioners will do it, no problem, I reckon. What with Manchester United struggling with relegation? Bloody Northerners, eh? What do they know of soccer? Should stick to whippets, eh? You know, it's really too bad when you think about it. Our being a Chelsea regiment and all. You'd think they'd have made an exception for us.
What are you on about, Cobb?
The FA Cup final.
What? Allowing a day trip back to Blighty for us? Let's face it, Cobb. You're about as keen on soccer as I am on your tennis or your croquet.
I enjoy neither, actually.
I bet you don't. I bet you don't even like sport.
I do, actually. I take a keen interest.
Oh, yeah? So who's top of Division 1 then, eh? Who won the last test match? See? You know bugger all. If you loved your sport, you wouldn't have to ask why I'm taking me football. It's like asking me why I'm taking my bleeding rifle.
Look, I'm terribly sorry if I've offended you in some way, Frankie. If I'd known you were so obsessed with your beloved football, I'd have kept my mouth shut.
Obsessed? Obsessed? What do you mean by that?
Nothing. It's the first word that came into my head.
Well, because a bloke loves his football, he's obsessed. Is that what you think? Is it? Is it? Why?
It was at that point my world went black. A beautifully appointed uppercut saw me knocked for 6. When I finally came round, I realised he'd been crying.
What? Frankie Edwards?
Highly improbable, I know, Sergeant. He confided in me. Told me things he could only tell a stranger.
Like what? I'd like to know.
That he wasn't a single man as he made out, but a widower.
No.
He'd married a girl when he was 19. They'd known each other since they were children. One thing led to another. Her father especially was not best pleased. After they got married, they rented a room off the King's Road and waited for the arrival. Except it never came.
I saw the handcart outside the house. Mrs. Duggan upstairs had called in the infirmary, but it was too late. They draped a thick blanket over the body, but it didn't stop the blood from coming through. As I got closer and saw the look on the neighbours' faces, I knew it was my Georgie under the blanket. But I kept telling myself it was someone else. And then her arm fell out over the side of the cart when they wheeled her away over the cobbles. I knew I'd lost both of them. Worst of it was her mum and dad. I was in my football kit at the time, see? I'd been playing for my firm that afternoon. Yeah, they said I should have been at home looking after her.
Edwards was a bit of a horror to me, Mr. Gibbs, but I've an awful lot to thank him for. His kicking that football ahead of the charges he did gave me something to focus the mind on. I couldn't see myself doing it otherwise. At least not without Sergeant Sadler's bayonet up my backside.
You did all right, lad.
I'll never forget when the order was passed down the line to stand to arms, and we put on those dreadful smoke hoods.
Time 0. I looked out through the peephole in the sandbags. So many hours spent measuring new angles on maps. So many scribblings on that chart that for all the world looked like the London Tube map.
Such a blasting hurricane of fire. By all the laws of nature, it should have turned the enemy into mud.
There was just sufficient wind to carry the gas over.
God, what an awe-inspiring spectacle that was. A 50-foot-high noxious veil. The whole countryside to the front, for as far as the eye could see, smothered by it.
The big push had begun.
It was so different. The expectancy of viewing the greatest battle in history, somehow strangely banal. As though we were in a box waiting for the actors to come on stage.
To our right, an army of dummies worked by strings. In the smoke and confusion, they was realistic enough to draw enemy fire. 10 seconds to go, and it was lead on, the Irish.
We all just looked at each other, sort of frozen, waiting for someone to confirm the signal to climb the ladders.
Over you go, lads! We must have appeared strange figures, hung about with bandoliers of ammunition. Our weird smoke helmets rolled on our heads like a sort of turban.
It was then that Frankie lobbed the football, just as a goalkeeper might fling it back up the field.
Our guns was like 10,000 thunderstorms. It wasn't possible for any of the armed to survive, but they did.
Half asphyxiated, every step taken with regimental precision. The only irregularity of the charge was the men dribbling the elusive football towards the German trench.
The sight of British Tommies coolly passing a ball from one to another must have given Fritzy the biggest shock of the war.
We spread out, like a line of forwards going after the ball, passing it to one another like it was Sunday morning kickabout. Frankie went down twice for the best kick goal in history.
And then the gas drifted back. Some was too slow to pull on their gas hoods and fell choking to the ground, while others continued to pass the ball through the merciless hail of bullets.
The Frenchies cheered us on.
We did all we had to, and more. We took the village of Loos itself, the smoke and the gas hiding everything. So much stabbing and shooting and bombing, we were all fit to drop.
We might well have gone beyond Loos to Lens itself, if we had reinforcements. Stick to it, lads, was the cry.
There was no giving in. 2 whole days passed with rifles near 2-0 to handle, bloodied and plastered in wet chalk, gassed and gasping for air, fouled by the fumes and dust from 1,000 guns and bombs and mortars, all mixed with the madness that comes over a man as he smashes another skull with a mallet, or slices his guts through a cold steel. And still, no reserves.
Well played, Philip. That final leg glance, played off the front foot, most impressive.
Oh, that's better. Never really been one for all this fresh air and physical malarkey.
You surprise me. You're a talented sportsman.
So, what can I do for you, Mr. Masterman?
Charles, please, Philip.
I'm sure you haven't come all this way to see me attempt to play cricket. Charles.
The most superior of all games, I think. The batsman's job, for example, to score as many runs as possible.
Yes?
Building an innings. Which requires sound judgment to work out which deliveries to defend, leave, or score off.
I'm assuming there's a point to this.
Not everyone's morning Kitchener's death. Tragic though it is.
Tragic? There are those who consider it hugely convenient. A figure from the past incapable of waging a modern war, suddenly and inexplicably dying aboard a British warship?
Which is precisely why we're drawing a line under it.
As we've done under Loos.
That's different.
It's been 8 months and there's been just one newspaper account of the first big push of the war.
Rogue report, you mean? The Weekly Dispatch broke all the rules. The editor's lucky not to be in prison. Extend your arm, man! The effects of the operation at Loos, or anywhere else come to that, must be far more beneficial than the ability to secure a spectacular headline.
Surely we must do what we can to learn the lessons of history, to make sure the same mistakes aren't made again. Whereas we can lose the occasional military relic without too much grieving, We can never again in this war afford to see another 60,000 men killed or injured for so little gain.
That's highly unlikely ever to happen again, Philip.
And what are the freedom of the press in all of this?
Freedom is about owning one's own destiny within the bounds of reason and morality, establishing one's own priorities and acting upon them accordingly.
Freedom has to be balanced with order. When one's freedom constricts another's, it has gone too far and there will be consequences. And what of that ridiculous picture in War Illustrated?
Oh, well played. Ridiculous picture? Oh, you mean the kick-off at the front?
It was a ludicrous fabrication. For a start, it wasn't an officer that kicked the ball over. It was a private. And the Battle of Loos wasn't even mentioned.
Those minor details aside, it has in fact served spectacularly to inspire any young buck who intends to provide his men with exactly the same reassuring rallying point.
Oh?
The East Surreys have been chosen to lead the next big push in a few weeks' time. And inspired by this image, a young captain has purchased a football for each of his 4 platoons, ready to be kicked ahead of the charge.
This isn't common knowledge, I take it.
Good Lord, no. There's a D notice on it until after the charge. Then the Bureau will go into overdrive. We're already working on an anthem to mark the episode.
Astounding. Prior to Loos, High Command feared the presence of a football at the front giving rise to another truce, even more than it did the use of poison gas.
Times have changed, Philip. This fresh endeavour now epitomised the character of the thousands across all classes, ranks and creeds, all blended into a single virtue, the game.
Oh, that's very good, Charles. You should write that down, stick it on a poster. But what of Loos in all of this? Is it really to be wiped completely from history?
The footballing exploit at Loos was but one of a million individual acts of valour, heroism and audacity.
And this next big push, how exactly is that to be viewed?
Now, that's what I want to talk to you about. We want you there, Philip, as part of a team, including a special cinematographic unit, to record the occasion.
The occasion?
This next push will be fought without the same lack of men and munitions. This time it's difficult to imagine any German surviving the massive artillery bombardment planned before the attack.
You mean they won't have dug deeper to play their card games as they did at Loos?
Conjecture is unprofitable, Philip. One can never replicate exactly the same sequence of events. There's always room for improvement, even hope and luck. We must be confident that we will never again see so many killed or injured for so little gain. Come, walk with me to my car.
And where is this next object lesson in mechanised slaughter to take place, Charles?
Oh, it's been described to me as a mild-mannered region of France with one small town set about a huge expanse of open ground.
You could be describing the landscape at Loos.
Indeed.
A landscape General Hay considered so bare and open that a more unpromising scene for a great offensive could hardly be imagined.
Hay's confident this time our numbers will win the day.
Will it become a name to remember, do you think, Charles?
For all the right reasons. I hope so, Philip.
I hope so too.
It takes the name of the river that flows through the region. The Somme.
The Greater Game by Ed Harris. Philip Gibbs was played by Dane Hardy. Charles Masterman by Keith Waite. Roland Burkitt by John Coop. Patrick McGill by Peter Hill. Sergeant Sadler by Tom Joyce. Frank Edwards by Jason Wing. Geoffrey Belton Cobb by Ollie Constam. Captain Dale by Ben Faulkner. And The Officer on a Train by Livio Mendez. The cabaret singer and supporting voices from the Richmond-upon-Thames community. Recording and studio production was by Steve Parry for Dazzle Sound Productions. The Greater Game was a Twickenham Museum community podcast, supported by the National Lottery through the Heritage Lottery Fund.